Level 1, the Garage Tinkerer. You're 16 years old, and your car is a 1995 Honda Civic hatchback bought for just €600 from a man who looked relieved to finally get rid of it. Rust eats away at the rear wheel arches, the driver's door handle is broken, and the exhaust rattles angrily above 3,000 revolutions per minute. To everyone else, it's a problem. To you, it's the beginning. Your garage isn't really a garage. It's a cold concrete box attached to your parents' house. It smells like old oil. There's a chest freezer nobody uses and shelves stacked with paint cans from projects long forgotten. Hang a single fluorescent tube from the ceiling. Drag the Civic inside. And you begin. At first, you have absolutely no idea what you're doing. And that's the most important part. You watch YouTube tutorials on a laptop balanced on a step stool because a proper monitor is out of the question. Pause the video. Try the job. Fail. Rewind. Try again. You strip a bolt and spend 40 frustrating minutes with an extractor kit. You reconnect a vacuum hose the wrong way, and suddenly the engine idles like it's possessed. Every mistake costs you time, sometimes money you don't even have. But every mistake teaches you something no video ever could. Your first modification? A cold air intake. You spend 3 weekends researching and 1 entire afternoon installing it. The moment you turn the key, the sound changes. Deeper at low RPM, sharper at the top end. Does it make more power? Not really, but it sounds like it does. And when you're 16, that matters more than anything. You sit in the driveway, engine humming, listening to the sound you created, and for the first time, you realize you didn't just change the car, you changed something inside yourself. Next comes lowering springs. You binge every tutorial you can find, buy the cheapest set with decent reviews, and then almost lose your hand trying to compress a spring without the proper tools. Lesson learned. You borrow a spring compressor from your neighbor. Take your time, follow every step carefully. Finally, you lower the car back onto the ground. It's only 15 millimeters lower than before, but to you, it looks perfect. You drive around for an hour straight, just feeling the difference, because this is how it starts for every great car tuner. Not in a professional shop, not with expensive tools, not with years of training. It starts in a garage that's barely a garage, with tools that aren't quite right, learning through mistakes, and a stubborn refusal to accept the words, "I don't know how." Level 2, the car meet regular. You're 18 now. The Civic has evolved through countless stages, different wheels, aftermarket suspension, and a front lip you painted yourself. It's slightly crooked, but only if you look closely. This car isn't just yours anymore, it's a part of you. You know exactly how it starts on a cold morning. You know the strange rattle that appears when you hit one specific bump at one specific angle. Every modification has a story, every bolt has a reason. 6 months ago, you discovered Car Meets. A parking lot on Sunday evenings. 40 cars, 40 personalities. A culture built around passion, late nights, and machines that reflect their owners. The first time you arrived, it felt like stepping into a world where everyone knew each other and you knew nobody. You parked beside a slammed Volkswagen. Its owner walked over, glanced at your Civic, and asked about your suspension setup. What started as a simple question became an hour-long conversation. That night changed everything. The community teaches you things no garage ever could. You see builds you never imagined. You learn the difference between what's genuinely well built and what only looks impressive online. Someone points out flaws in your wheel fitment you couldn't see yourself. Another explains why your brake bias matters more than lowering the car another inch. Knowledge doesn't transfer through manuals here. It transfers through conversations. Then you learn something deeper, the culture's hierarchy. Cars are judged with brutal honesty. At first, it feels harsh. Later, you realize it's respect. Nobody sugarcoats a bad build because pretending it's good would be insulting. When someone takes the time to tell you what's wrong, it's because they believe you can make it right. So you stop taking criticism personally. You start treating it as information. And slowly, your build changes. Not more extreme, cleaner. Because every serious tuner eventually discovers the same truth. Restraint is far harder and far more impressive than excess. Level 3, the track day driver. 20 years old and someone at a meet invites you to a track day, a proper circuit, time slots, instruction available for beginners. You go expecting to go fast. You discover that you don't know how to drive your own car. The first session is 20 minutes. A more experienced driver rides along with you for the first 3 laps. He doesn't say much, he lets you drive. At the end of the 3 laps, he tells you 3 specific things you're doing wrong. You're braking too early and too hard. You're carrying too much speed into corners and losing it on exit. Your hands are tense and transmitting net tension to the steering. You spend the rest of the day working on one thing at a time. The difference between driving a modified car on the road and driving any car on a track is the difference between listening to music and playing it. One is passive, one requires everything. You modify the car differently after your first track day. Performance-oriented now. Brake pads with better heat resistance, fluid that doesn't boil under sustained load, tires with more grip because grip is everything and anything else you add on top of better tires is secondary. You take weight out. Rear seats gone. Spare tire gone. Things you'd never remove on a road car come out without hesitation because the track doesn't need them. The car gets faster. You get faster. The two processes happen together and it's impossible to separate them. This is the thing about car tuning that nobody explains before you experience it. The car and the driver develop in parallel. A faster car in the hands of an undeveloped driver is just a faster way to make the same mistakes. A developed driver in an untouched car is already finding tints that modifications couldn't manufacture. Level 4, the serious builder. 23 years old, the Civic is gone. You sold it to someone who reminded you of yourself 4 years ago and used the money plus savings plus a loan from your father to buy something with more potential. A second-generation Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX. All-wheel drive, turbocharged from the factory. A platform with a real ceiling. You build it properly this time. Not because you couldn't before, but because now you know what properly means. Every modification has a reason. The turbo is upgraded because the factory unit flows insufficiently for your target power number. The fuel system is upgraded because more power means more fuel demand. The intercooler is upgraded because heat-soaked air loses density and density is power. Every change connects to the next one. The system thinking that you couldn't do it 16 because you didn't know the system. You tune the engine management yourself for the first time. You borrow an ECU reflash setup from a friend who's deeper into this than you are. You spend 2 full weekends learning the software. The first time you make a change and log the data and see the result, you feel something shift in your understanding. The engine is a system of inputs and outputs. The ECU is the translator. Tuning is the process of making the translation more accurate and more efficient. You've been a passenger in this process until now. Suddenly, you're in the room where it happens. The Eclipse makes 300 horsepower on a conservative tune on a dyno in a shop you respect, not a number you're estimating or claiming, a number with a chart behind it. You drive it home and the 30-minute drive is the most focused 30 minutes of driving you've ever done. Level 5, the known name. 26, and you have a reputation in the regional tuning scene. Not famous, known. Your posts get shared. People recognize your car at events. Builders at a higher level know your name because you've asked good questions and done visible work. You've started helping other people with their builds. Not professionally, as a favor or because a problem is interesting, or because someone trusted you with their car and that trust is worth honoring. You diagnose things. A friend's Subaru has been tuned by 3 different people and still runs rough under boost. You spend a Saturday with a laptop and a wideband sensor working through it methodically. You find a vacuum leak so small it took 3 tuners to miss. The car runs cleanly for the first time in 2 years. You realize that diagnosing is a separate skill from building. Building is understanding how things should go together. Diagnosing is understanding why they didn't. Both require knowledge. Diagnosis requires something beyond knowledge, a kind of pattern recognition that comes from having seen enough failures to understand what failure looks like. You've seen enough now. The pattern recognition is there. You build a turbocharged front-wheel drive build that reaches 500 horsepower at the wheels on a platform not designed for it with a traction management solution you developed yourself after the car tried to kill you twice during testing. The build gets featured in a Japanese car culture magazine that reaches people you've never met. 47 messages from different countries in the week after it publishes. Level 6, the professional tuner. 29 and you're doing this for money. Not only for money, but consistently for money, which is different from the before. A small space, a lift, a dyno you share time on at a facility down the street, a laptop with 7 different ECU tuning platforms on it, a waiting list of 3 weeks. The professional environment reveals something the garage never could. When it's your money and your car, you accept a certain level of risk and a certain timeline. When it's someone else's car and someone else's money, the standards are absolute. The difference between a tune that works and a tune that's right is invisible to most people. It becomes the thing you're most focused on. Customers bring you things they've bought cheap and tuned badly and want fixed. Some of them are fixable. Some of them are genuinely dangerous and you have conversations that require saying things people don't want to hear. You've seen enough engines destroyed by bad tuning decisions to understand that there are lines worth holding, even when someone is upset about it. You develop specialties, forced induction on naturally aspirated platforms, ethanol fuel conversions, older Japanese domestic market engines that most tuners don't know and fewer want to learn. The knowledge that most people won't bother acquiring becomes the knowledge that defines your practice. You charge accordingly. The community knows you differently now. Not as someone with a good build, as someone with a practice. The distinction matters. A good build is an outcome. A practice is a commitment to a standard of work across every outcome. Level 7, the respected shop, 33 years old. You have a proper shop now. 3 bays, 2 lifts, your own dyno, 2 full-time employees. One of them you trained yourself from someone who knew almost nothing. He's good now, better than you were at his age because he had you to learn from. The shop has a reputation that extends beyond the region. People bring cars from hours away. You've turned down builds that weren't right for reasons that weren't apparent to the customer. That's always a hard conversation, but it protects something more important than the revenue. A car you tuned holds a regional record for its class. You also teach, formally now, workshops at the shop, technical seminars at car events. You write technical content that gets read by people learning the craft. The knowledge that took you 15 years to accumulate moves faster through other people because you're organizing it and transmitting it rather than waiting for each person to discover it independently. This accelerates everything. It's the most satisfying thing you do that doesn't involve a dyno. The business side is harder than the mechanical side ever was. Invoices, insurance, VAT returns, equipment that needs replacing exactly when you can the least afford it, staff who get sick or leave or need things. You solve these problems the same way you solved mechanical problems, systematically, with the assumption that everything has a solution if you understand the problem correctly. Level 8, the builder of legends. You're 38 years old and the car sitting in your shop is going to hold a world record. Not almost, it's going to do it. You know this because you've been through the math 500 times, because the components are chosen with no compromise, because you've tested and retested and understood every variable, because the driver is the best you've ever worked with, and you've worked with people who compete internationally. The car is a Nissan Skyline that has been stripped to its legal minimum and rebuilt around a purpose-built engine that produces power numbers that would have seemed fictional 20 years ago. You built the engine yourself over 9 months, not because you needed to, because no one else who builds them is going to know it the way you know it. Record day comes. The car runs. It's not the first attempt that sets the record. The second attempt reveals something the data didn't show in testing. A fuel delivery inconsistency at the top of 4th gear. You fix it that evening. The second day the car runs clean. The record falls by a margin that surprises even you. You don't post about it immediately. You drive home. You sit in the kitchen and drink something hot and think about the Civic in the concrete garage with the fluorescent tube and the laptop on the step stool. The distance between that moment and this one is almost impossible to calculate. And yet the logic of it is perfectly clear. Every step followed the one before it. Every mistake became part of the knowledge. Every car taught you something the car before couldn't. Level 9. The legacy. 42 years old. The shop has trained 11 people who now have their own practices. A car you built is in a museum of Japanese automotive history in Tokyo. You were invited to a global technical summit and you spoke for 40 minutes to engineers from manufacturers who build the cars you learned on. You still do the work yourself. Not all of it. The business requires too much of you now. But the builds that matter most, you stay close to. Because the moment you stop doing the work, the knowledge starts drifting from real to theoretical. And theoretical knowledge in a tuning shop is a liability you refuse to carry. Somewhere right now a 16-year-old is in a concrete garage with a used car they paid too much for and tools they're not sure how to use. They're watching a video on a laptop propped on something that isn't a monitor. They're going to do it wrong the first time. They're going to strip a bolt and feel stupid. They're going to get it right eventually and feel something that will point them forward for the next 20 years. They'll figure it out. Most do. Some of them will reach the level you reached. A few of them will go further. Because they'll learn what you learned, but they'll also learn what you didn't. That's how it's supposed to work.